Our guest painter for this edition is a great example of how he mixes visual art and music. He's also from the New York scene, and he's known for his improvised live paintings, which he does on the spot, guided only by the music that's being performed.
I paint to the music, and when I'm inspired by a story in the music, it gives me an impression on what I want to do.
Okay.
A lot of times I don't know what I'm going to do, but if the music speaks to me, it can open me up. Sometimes verbally, if I hear verbal stories from a song, or sometimes just the instrumental. If I hear tribal rhythms.
It gives you the essence.
Because I love tribal music. First it's the drum, and then the bass. And then I think the last thing for me is lyrics. I don't need lyrics, but the improvisation part of it is the most important thing.
Okay.
And when lyrics come into the picture, sometimes that disrupts my improvisation. Well, it was a challenge from my art gallery. About 6 years ago, there was a festival in Rotterdam. And my art gallery said, "Would you like to paint live on stage?" I said, "I've never done that. I'm shy." He said, "Yeah, but try it. You can paint fast. You're good." I said, "I don't know." So a musician, Greg Osby, Greg Osby asked me to paint, because I did
was North Sea Jazz.
North Sea Jazz. I did Greg's CD cover. And he asked if I would like to paint with him at the North Sea Jazz, and I said, "I don't know, Greg. I've never done this." Because I have confidence in you. Come on, it's for an hour. Just turn it out. And at the time I was even too shy to turn around and look at the audience. And I just kept my concentration and listened to Greg. And I cranked out a beautiful painting in an hour. When you paint live, you're like in the moment. And I noticed people like to see the painting.
Of course.
I really noticed that. I never noticed it before, but afterwards, it's as though brought them into my world for an hour. The mystery of painting.
Of course. And we're happy that you did it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Now I know what you do.
Is it?
Listen, I'm an amateur comedian, all right?
Our final guest is an accomplished poet, novelist and musician, known for his Spasm Band. We managed to get him to do an exclusive Writer's Bench appearance with a stripped-down lineup, which included Silvano Matadin from the Urban Dance Squad on bass and electronics, and Bowie from Defunct on trombone and percussion. This is the point at which poetry becomes music.
So, are we ready for Anthony Joseph? That's not very convincing, is it?
Yes!
I bet you wish other people did that with you.
And that night I spent there with the cicadas in that clear village sky. I mean, even though each room was still unfinished and each sadness was hid, I would have stayed right there with my father if he had asked. Eccentrics.
Okay.
And it's the third album. The first album was completely experimental. The second album was a little bit more structured. And now the record company is like, we need 3 or 4 songs for radio. We need radio material. We need video stuff. We need songs, So we've worked for the past year. I've changed the lineup of the band. We've really invested a lot of time into getting a song-based album. So most of the songs are song-based.
Okay.
Rather than
and you're writing in the songs because your background is a writer of poetry, but
no, I don't write them as songs.
You don't write them as songs, but they take on the form of songs with the band.
They start off as poems, but my poetry is rhythm. Poetry is rhythm and music. Poetry is music. It's written music.
Of course.
So it's very easy sometimes to make that transition from a poem into a beat and write it. Eventually, you work at it long enough, it becomes a song. My father was absent for most of my life in Trinidad. I grew up in Trinidad, and my father, I would see him once a year, usually Christmas time, usually around this time he'd come. But I got to tell you about my father. My father was and is still alive, a dude. You know what I mean by a dude? Like really funky, really slick clothes, a lot of rings. These are some of his rings. Really, you know, bell bottoms. This is the 70s, man. He's always like, you know. And I was an order guy. I was like, wow, man, I want to be like you. But I wouldn't see him very often. And when I saw him, he was always with women and money and, yeah, very inspirational. You know what I mean?
No women around.
Yeah, so anyway. But he was away. He was living in an island called Tobago, which is next to Trinidad. And then he came back in the early 80s. And when he came back, he was broke. He had nothing. He was like, he was fucked, essentially. He didn't have anything, no money. And he was broke. He was a broken man. And he was kind of starting his life over again. And that's when I really got to know who the real guy was. Yeah.
Entrance to writing.
Yeah, poetry is what I do.
Okay.
You know, I'm a poet. I see myself as a poet, which is a small word, but a big title to take on.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time before I realized that, you know, that's what you are, man. And it means that it's like an artist. An artist sees everything sees the world in terms of art. How can you transform this into art?
Yeah.
How can you know, that's the question you always ask yourself.
Yeah.
I'm sure with you as well, you know, with your DJing, you know, how do you transform this moment into something that you can take away that's art, you know?
Yeah.
So a poet thinks like that as well, and they think of every phenomenon and every experience, emotional or whatever, physical, as a poetic moment. We seek that.
Yeah.
And that informs everything I do, so I'm a poet.
And you're happy to make the transition, or it's maybe a natural one, from being, let's say, just a poet, but a poet who now works quite exclusively with a band, with a tight band.
I tell you what, man, I mean, I made the mistake.
Yeah.
No, not a mistake. I was lucky, I would say. I was fortunate to try to experiment with my dreams. I was growing up in Trinidad. I got into Jimi Hendrix, like, you know, early on, and people like Hendrix and Miles, and I was like, wow, you know, what's going on here? That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was writing, but being a writer, being a poet in Trinidad is non-existent in terms of the culture didn't support that for me at the time.
Okay.
In my family,
As a realistic, this is what I do, this is what I am. I am a poet. He's a farmer, and he's
poetry was something that you read in school, and I didn't know any poets or writers. You know, I grew up with my grandparents, so at one point I came across music and the power of live music and rock and roll, and stuff like that, and I became hooked in it. And I thought, I want to do that.
I said, people, if you are rich and wise with a choir of timber, I know. I know that birds may whistle inside of your temptation. Speak the name which can break the fight and comes back. Come on. Speak the name which can break the fight and comes back. In the hollow river where I used to live. Which can break the fighting cocks back.
Well, you know, I think developing your career is making the right decisions in the moment. You know? You make good decisions now, it influences your future. So far, the point that I'm at now, I think I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
And it's based on decisions I made in the past. And, you know, my career is kind of split between academia and music.
Yeah.
And the music side is going really well. We're just about to record the third album. Good profile in France. Solid band.
Yeah, and I see your tour from last year. Your tour schedule. I remember looking it up, and I was like, "Oh, this guy is working."
Yeah, so that's running good. I mean, you know, because the music that we do is not pop music. It's not mainstream music. So.
But you've captured a certain audience. Particularly in France. But you've captured something clicked.
Yeah.
Have you done with your band, Spasm Band Antwerp?
No.
Okay, so that's the next. So you hear that the Writers' Bench going to bring the Spasm Band to Antwerp for the first time. You know, I claim it like Antwerp's mine. I'm bringing the people to Antwerp. No.
Cool.
Hey, brother, it's a
Man, it's
pleasure,
been a
man.
pleasure, man. Thanks, man.
And
Good
hey,
interview, man.
enjoy.
You didn't have anything with us.
No, enjoy tonight. Enjoy tonight, man.
I'll try,
It's a
man.
pleasure to have you here, and the lineup that you have with you as well. You know, it's going to be a beautiful
Yeah,
experiment.
it's good guys. Good guys.
You know,
Cool. Thanks, man.
yeah. Hey, bless.
Thank you. Thank you. See you later. Anthony Joseph. Anthony Joseph. Anthony
So what is the writer's bench? If you think of the way that people experience art these days, take an average iPod for instance, with anything from Miles Davis to G.G. Allen, and clips from Spike Jones to homemade experiments. Well, we put it all under one roof, the writer's bench, a place where artists meet.